tell the father that I've done wrong. The prodigal son. I'll go back home. Oh, yes, I'll go back home to church. I'm gonna tell my father, I done wrong, and father, just let me come back home. Hello, and welcome to Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron. Sunday School lesson for Sunday, March the 5th, 2023. Our reference material for the Sunday School Summary is based upon the International Sunday School Lesson Series as published by the Sunday School Publishing Board. We are discussing Jesus Calls as the title of the Spring Lesson Series, and it is a discussion of the connection between Jesus' earthly ministry to the establishment of the early church as documented in all four Gospels. We are talking about Unit 1 of Jesus Called, and it is titled Called from the Margins of Society, and it explores how Jesus ignored society barriers and focused his message on those people on the margins or the outcasts of society. Jesus Calls us quarterly, documents Jesus' earthly ministry through all four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it continues on to the resurrection of Jesus Christ and also the formation of the early church after Jesus' death. The title of our first lesson in the Unit 1 Spring Lesson Series is titled Love in Difficult Times, or Love in Difficult Circumstances, and that is required, or that is made possible by forgiveness, because we focus our forgiveness on our love for the individual and not on the act which may have caused us harm by that individual. Luke chapter 15 verse 21 is our key verse, and it reads, "The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.'" And of course, these are the words of the prodigal son who has squandered his inheritance and now is seeking mercy from his father. The title of today's lesson, Love in Difficult Times, is from the book of Luke. Luke's Gospel, or Good News, is a record in order of the main events of Jesus' life. Luke was a doctor or physician, and his account of the Gospel is somewhat more detailed than the other Gospels. Luke was also a friend and companion of Paul on his missionary journeys. Luke recorded how Jesus taught many lessons to the people by telling stories with a meaning to teach the people about godly ways or godly principles of living. Jesus preached to everyone, but primarily his audience was to the outcast or the margins of society, and he encouraged them to confess or acknowledge their evil deeds and to trust in God, which brings us to today's lesson. There are three summary lesson points for today. A foolish son's requests, and that's from Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 16. A foolish son's repents, and that's from Luke chapter 15, verses 17 through 19. And lastly, a father's unconditional love, and that's from Luke chapter 15, verses 20 through 24. The passages for the lesson today revolve around the key words of faith, which is the complete trust, assurance, belief, or confidence in God. It is to trust in God during times of trouble, as the prodigal son trusts in God today in today's lesson. Parable. It's a story used to illustrate a moral or a religious principle. It's unwise decision that leads the younger son to become hungry and destitute in today's lesson is the parable. Prodigal, it's characterized by excessive, wasteful, or unnecessary expenditures. And this is the lifestyle that led to the downfall of the prodigal son in today's lesson. First summary point is from Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 16, and it's a foolish son's request. And these passages, Jesus continued to teach in parables and illustrates the effect of foolish or unwise decision or requests. In other words, waste not, want not. And in the parable, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to the father, "Give me his share of the estate." So he divided the property and between the two sons. So the younger son cashed out, as we would say today, or liquidated his assets. And he also went away and he spent everything that he had. And of course, after he had spent everything that he had, trouble struck. A severe famine affected the whole country. So he went then and hired himself out and to the citizens of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. And this was a very low life job for a person of Jewish religion. So he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating. He would even consider eating them, even though they were horrible to digest for humans. He was so hungry. So a foolish son, he repents, and this is from Luke chapter 15, verses 17 through 19. And in these passages, the parable continues with the foolish son experiencing a spiritual transformation or change as he reflects and recognizes the error of his ways and decides to seek forgiveness from his father. And in these passages, he says that when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am, starving to death." He says, "I will go out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and that I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' And he says, 'I will settle for living like a hired servant.'" So he has had a change of heart, and he is willing to live at a lesser standard in his father's house than to live in the world. The Father's unconditional love is the final summary point from Luke chapter 15, verses 20 through 24. And in these passages reflect the love of the Father in spite of mistreatments and or disappointments. So he got up and went to his father, it says, but when the father saw him from a distance, he was filled with compassion, and he ran to meet his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. So the father displayed a godly behavior, even though the son expected to be shunned or rejected. It all goes on to say that the son said to the father, "I have sinned against heaven and against you," and that he's no longer worthy to be his son. So the son felt undeserving of the father's unconditional love. But the father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet." So the son felt undeserving, but the father did not look at the wrong. The father thanked God for the transformation of the son. And the father celebrated because he had regained his son. This is Brother Ron with the Sunday School Summary for Sunday, March the 5th, 2023. Thank you for watching. Have a blessed week, and we hope to see you next Sunday for another edition of Sunday School Summary with Brother Ron.